Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for hopping on tonight. We are going to get started. Thank you all for your patience. We still had a lot of folks joining, so I wanted to make sure to give everyone some time to get on. But hello, welcome. My name is Sarah Marino. I'm with our national organizing team here with Indivisible. So welcome to our third national activist call. We are so thrilled that so many of you could join us for this call, and it's especially exciting that even after the marathon that was the midterms, we have over 1,400 people on this call right now and still growing every second. So it's truly a testament to the spirit and to the grit of the Indivisible movement. But before we jump into the bulk of the call, on behalf of the entire Indivisible national team, we wanted to take a moment to celebrate and say thank you to all of you. It seems like a lifetime ago that we started the Indivisible Project in what felt like the darkest of circumstances, and with nothing except the determined conviction that we wouldn't allow the Trump Republican agenda to define the politics of our lifetime. Last Tuesday, we delivered the greatest swing of political power in recent American history by electing 100 progressive women and diverse candidates to Congress, making it the most diverse Congress in history, and a real rebuke to the divisiveness of the White House. We want you to know that we see the tireless work you have put into this, and we are so, so grateful to you. In the recent pulse check email we sent around asking for you to share with us how you were all feeling after the election, we had a lot of folks that were feeling pretty great about what we accomplished, and also a fair number who were upset, sad, and apprehensive that we didn't accomplish nearly enough in holding our ground in the Senate and in picking up additional seats in state government due to voter suppression and gerrymandering. Those are structural barriers to fair and representative democracy that we must acknowledge and work to undo. It's also important to note that the mood is really hopeful too. So we had a lot of great comments. So we heard from a leader in Georgia. She said positive in many ways, but also knowing that there is a ton of work to be done to protect our rights, to heal the bipartisan divide, and to protect our environment. A leader from Texas said, much more positive than negative. Sorry, Beto lost, but we believe we will see him again and are now far more prepared than we were 2 years ago. So I think that sums it up pretty perfectly. We have a lot of work to do, and the toughest part may yet still be ahead of us, but we have a lot to be proud of, and we are so much better prepared for the task ahead of us than we were 2 years ago. So now let's dive into some things. Our national activist calls. So for those of you who have been on previous calls, you know that these calls will take place each month on the first Thursday of the month. So these are calls for everyone who wants to get involved. So it can be for group leaders, group members, for folks who are new to the Indivisible movement. And it's a great way to celebrate our victories, share our strategic vision, and most importantly, build community across this massive organization that we're all part of. So on this call in particular, we're going to spend some time debriefing the election, celebrating our successes, and then we're really going to dive into the future. So what are the first 100 days of the new Congress, and what do we do now that we have a Democratic House, both at the federal level and at the state level? So we'll pull back the curtain on what we're hoping to accomplish and talk about the first few actions that we'll be taking together as indivisibles. So a couple of pieces of housekeeping before we dive into things. I just want to acknowledge that we will be doing a lot of talking on this call, so you'll be hearing a lot from national staff up front, but we will be making space for you all to ask questions at the end of the call. And we're also going to continue to make more space for those questions in the future. So you'll notice in the top right-hand corner of the screen that there is a Q&A box. I see folks are already starting to use that. So you can use that to start asking questions, and we'll take as many as we can at the end of the call. And this is also just the beginning of the conversation, so we'll have many more opportunities to ask and have questions answered in the following weeks that we'll talk about later. And also, please continue to make use of the chat box, share highlights, best practices. We love seeing all of that. Share where you're coming from, and keep up the conversation in the chat box. I also want to say that we know that there are going to be folks with varying degrees of experience with Indivisible, with varying degrees of experience with activism who are joining on the call tonight. It looks like we're over 1,500 people at this point, so we have quite a variety of folks on the call. So for some of you, many of the things that you hear may be information that you've already heard before or things that you're already thinking about. For others, this may be really new information. So we want to really make sure that we're accommodating everyone. So bear with us if things sound new, and feel free to bear with us if things sound not new, and feel free to ask questions if things sound very new. And finally, I just do want to note that the content of this call is not for media. The contents of our new guide and some of that information is embargoed to the press until later on. So please keep the content of this call within this group for the time being. Other than that, once again, thank you so much for all your hard work. Thank you so much for getting right back up again and joining us tonight. And I'm going to hand it over to our political director, Mari Urbina.
Hey, thanks so much, Sarah. Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to be joining you tonight. I see so many familiar faces of our movement familia in the chat box. Thanks for all the saludos and greetings. I'm so excited. My name's Mari Urbina. For those of you I don't know, folks call me Mari, and I'm going to share just a couple reflections with you tonight about the midterm elections. Many of these you may know, but just want to center us a little bit in celebrating our success before you hear from my colleagues with really exciting developments and next steps for our movement. And there's definitely going to be time for some dialogue later as well. So I'm going to be reading from my notes to make sure that I stay on time and keep it tight to be mindful of everyone's time. As we await the updating of voter files and final ballot counts and recounts to happen across the country because #CountEveryVote, let's center a few takeaways. The grassroots delivered the highest midterm turnout in 50 years and the most progressive and historic class of incoming members of Congress. Your early activism set the climate, tying Republicans to their votes on unpopular votes and holding them accountable early, a year before any of these candidates were even on TV. Your advocacy put members of Congress on the defense and pushed them to retire. This expanded our map. This constituent power and enormous grassroots network ushered in the most democratic pickups since Watergate. And right now we're at 34. We saw our base, especially among people of color and youth, turn out at historic levels and often doubled in their turnout in some states since their last midterm. Our support among white women grew and cut into Trump's support from white women. Our collective organizing, storytelling, and electoral engagement delivered in so many ways. We're going to talk about a few examples tonight from the movement, even though I see many, many amazing folks who have amazing wins and gains to talk about across the country. I just want to give a quick shout out to folks who left their name in the chat, from Nevada to Colorado to New Mexico, Ohio, New Jersey, Oregon, Mass, Kansas, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Maryland, Mississippi, Washington, Minnesota, Maine, South Carolina. Y'all had great wins. And I'm sorry I can't go deep into every example tonight, but we're going to lift up a couple movement brothers and sisters who've been doing really amazing work over the last cycle. Arizona groups were relentless in their fight to defeat Prop 305 and support down ballot candidates, which resulted in up-ticket wins for Sinema that was officially called last night. Together, Arizona groups organized over 80 events and made over 24,000 attempts via calls and knocks using Indivisible tools. Across the country, in New York 19, Indivisibles had been showing up at Rep. Fasso's district consistently, making it clear that he didn't represent them. They channeled that energy into Delgado's campaign and were knocking doors all across the district for months. Indivisibles in New York also handed progressives a Democratic trifecta, some of which started early through organizing around the Westchester County executive seat. On the other side of the coast in California 48, Harley Ruta's district, which was hard fought and very competitive, was put on the map squarely because of local Indivisibles and their leadership, using the endorsement guide, developing a robust way to vet these candidates, and ensuring that the ultimate winner knew that their win was indebted to the grassroots. Down south, Tennessee groups also came out in force, embracing our roots as a movement of transparency and accountability. Nashville and Middle Tennessee, Indivisible helped to pass a community oversight board after years of rampant police violence in their community. Indivisible East Tennessee flipped a state house seat to elect a bold progressive woman that will lead the charge on Medicaid expansion. And finally, the rural groups located in Appalachian Mountains have knocked on doors in areas where Democrats have never been and are building a foundation for wins in 2020 to see a more purple Tennessee. But we also had great wins throughout the Midwest. during this cycle. ICT Indivisible and Indivisible Kansas City worked tirelessly to flip the 3rd Congressional District, as well as the governor's seat in Kansas. Illinois had some amazing wins as well. Our groups in Illinois had victories across the ballot, winning the governorship, attorney general, and the 6th and 14th congressional districts, led by Oak Park Indivisible and South Suburban Indivisible. But winning for us is also about building power over the long term. The gains y'all made in places like Tennessee, North Carolina, Texas, Georgia, and Florida are huge and cannot be overstated. Running strong congressional and down ballot campaigns that may have missed a curly W this cycle sets us up for wins in future cycles, like the awesome success in Georgia 6th. How proud are we of Lucy McBeth and Georgia Indivisibles? Our commitment to building power everywhere is about talking to folks who have long been overlooked, especially in red areas. Indivisibles engaging in a 435 strategy resulted in a total shift to the left, moving 317 districts to the left. Our very own Indivisible endorsed candidates helped with these swings. Our overall swing to the left was 8 points through our candidates, and in solid R districts was 15 points. One cycle, incredible progress. Our constituent power transformed the map, so progressives everywhere felt a sense of community and a sense of real support. This grassroots backing was the catalyst for a record number of candidates running as first-time candidates. 158 Democratic House candidates were first-time candidates. The grassroots with our partners helped field a robust Democratic bench. 98% of our seats were contested by Democrats. We're finally competing with Republicans everywhere, and we're demanding better representation. So what is this? Why does this all matter? As we look to build on these demographic gains in the electorate, we are hopeful about the power we've built and the hard work ahead. We commit that as we think about electoral planning in 2019 and 2020 and beyond, we will continue to work to center your leadership, to center local and grassroots leadership to grow our power. We are clear that Trump will not be easy to take down. The Senate map is more favorable to Democrats, and the flips statewide give us a commanding start for 2019 and 2020. But I believe in us, y si se puede. Now on to, I believe, Sarah, who will take it on to the next speaker.
Yes, thank you so much, Mari. That was wonderful. So great to celebrate all the amazing things that led to that blue wave on Tuesday. So I believe we now have one of our co-executive directors, Ezra Levin, on the line. Ezra, are you there?
I think I'm here. Can you hear me?
You are there. Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Amazing, the wonders of technology. I am only on for a second, folks. I am so thrilled to be joining tonight. We are incredibly proud and just excited to be part of this movement with you all. Thank you to everybody on this call who was part of building that blue wave. This wouldn't have happened without you. They thought it couldn't happen, but you did it. And now we're in a completely different political place, and we have a ton of new opportunities. So it's my job right now just to turn this over to our other co-executive director, Leah Greenberg, who's going to walk through this new strategy that is based on this new political opportunity we have now that we've taken so many House governments and now that we've taken back the House of Representatives. If you hear beeping in the background, it's because I am literally in the car on the way to the Rachel Maddow show, where I will be covering this tonight. But Leah is giving you a sneak peek because y'all are the leaders of this movement, and you're going to keep on building, and we're going to be there every step. So, Leah, over to you to dive into the details of how we're going to take advantage of this new House majority and the new state governments we have control over. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Ezra. Can you hear me? Let's see.
Yep, we got you.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Leah Greenberg, also co-executive director of Indivisible. I am so thrilled to be joining you tonight. I'm going to start by taking things back a little bit. When Ezra and I wrote the original Indivisible guide 2 years ago, about this time 2 years ago, we all knew that the landscape was dark. The clouds were gathering. The Trump administration was coming in, and we were going to have no choice but to play defense. Because the Trump administration was going to control Washington, D.C. They had the presidency, they had both houses of Congress, and they had the courts, let's be honest. And so we were going to have no choice but to play defense because they had the ability to shape what was moving through Congress and what was getting a hearing. And what did they do with that power? They tried to destroy families and communities to give more money to the powerful and the wealthy. They took healthcare, or they tried to take healthcare. You stopped them. They tried to hurt immigrant families, putting kids in cages and deporting family members. They tried to move massive tax cuts for the wealthy multiple times and got some through. They gutted regulations to protect our environment, and so much more damage. And now I am so glad to be joining you because things have changed. Thanks to your work, the political context is different. We have control of a chamber of Congress, and that means that we have an updated strategy because there is new stuff to do. So what does control mean? It means that when we take the House, or when we take office on January 3rd, Democrats are going to have partial agenda setting power. And that means we don't just have to play defense. We go on offense. We get to not just resist, but insist on the things that we want, and we have the power to make that happen. Now, agenda setting power is the ability to decide what your chamber of Congress works on, which means that it's actually the ability to shape the national discussion and to focus attention on certain issues, on policy issues, and also on investigations into what the administration is doing. Now, it's not a silver bullet. Democrats cannot unilaterally pass laws, which means that we still have to get, and for anything to become legislation, it's still going to have to pass the Republican Senate, and it's going to have to be signed by Donald Trump. And that means that the kinds of things that we would want, or that could pass, are not very good. But this provides huge new opportunities on the agenda to fight Trump and the GOP and to set us up for the moment when we take power back. So that is why I'm super excited to be releasing this overarching strategy, Indivisible on Offense, that walks through the ins and outs of the power that Democrats have now, and a state framework that helps us think about how we're going to resist Trump and move the ball forward at the state level at the same time. So I'm going to provide a quick preview of what you can expect in those guides. So the framework has 3 prongs: offense, oversight, and defense. So agenda setting power means, first, you can go on offense. That's about drawing a striking contrast to Trump's vision for America versus our vision for America. In order to win in 2020, we need to show voters, we need to show the American people that we have a different vision for the kind of country that we could be. And that's about passing bold legislation that really sets us apart, that shows what we could do and how we could make people's lives better and how we can make our democracy better. Everything from democracy reform to healthcare to immigration, we can move these into climate change, we can move this forward. Oversight. Congress has a constitutional obligation to conduct oversight of the executive branch, and we have spent the last 2 years with Republicans who have completely abandoned that duty. Now we have a ton of work to do because we can pick up for them. And that's everything from protecting the Mueller investigation and, if need be, investigating collusion and corruption ourselves, to also investigating all of the many different corruption scandals that have flown under the radar and the many different ways that the agencies have subverted their power. So that's looking into things like ACA sabotage. That's looking into things like the disaster response to Hurricane Maria, into family separation, into all of the things that a functioning House of Representatives would have been investigating a long time ago. And in doing so, it's keeping that in the news, and it's also tying up the agency so that they can't come up with more dangerous, harmful things that hurt our democracy. Now, the third part is defense. So keep in mind, the Republicans still control the Senate. They're going to continue to try and move some bad stuff through the Senate. They're going to try and push some compromise legislation, or they're going to try and cut some deals, and that will help Trump get reelected, that will move things like judges, and also different kinds of compromises that could be real problems for us. And so we are going to have to remember to continue pushing our representatives to hold firm on our values on that front as well. Now, in addition to all of this strategy, we're also about how do we keep going, right? It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. We're organizing locally. We need our groups to be sustainable. We need to do the work together. We need to be effective together. And so we have practical tools within that. First, about how do you actually, one more piece on advocacy, which is how do you actually make the right kind of ask? Being on offense is exciting. It's also complicated. Lots of people will tell you that they agree with you, but you need to actually have the tools to assess whether they're doing what you want them to do. And that's all about crafting an ask and then figuring out whether your representative is actually upholding that ask. The other piece of this is thinking about how we work together, and Susanna is going to talk about that more soon. Now, one additional thing. The other huge piece of this puzzle is the states. We're releasing a state guide tomorrow. we are so committed to providing groups with the most strategic advice. And while there are some places where we're going to need all hands on deck at the federal level, from the reddest state to the bluest state, in order to push a national message, at many states, the most strategic place to make change right now, maybe at the state level. States are really where we have the chance. Hi, did I just come back on?
Yeah, we got you back.
You got me back? Okay, great. Did you hear the part where I realized I was off?
Nope.
Okay. Great. Cool. So where did I leave off?
States are really the place.
States are the place. Okay, so states are the place where we can really pass real progressive legislation right now. So the victory in the House means that we can move some things to demonstrate what we stand for. Those are not necessarily going to make it into law. But where we can actually get real stuff done is at the state level. And there is so much that we can do. We can follow, for the 6 states that have become Democratic trifectas, we can follow the model of Washington State, which became a trifecta last year and immediately moved an entire wave of incredible new legislation on everything from the environment to democracy protection to wages. So much moved forward. And that is the opportunity now. And maybe more important, states are really the center of how we start to unrig our democracy. We all know we've got a problem. Look, maybe just to go for the statistics, in 2010, the Republicans won the House popular vote by 6.7 points. They flipped 63 seats. This year, we're going to have won the House by a bigger margin, 7.1%, and we're going to have flipped about 2/3 of those seats when it's all done. That difference is the direct result of a GOP strategy that has been a decade in the making of taking over state houses, gerrymandering districts, remaking the rules, and then choosing their own electorate so that they can stay in power. We've been sleeping on state legislatures, and it's cost us. We lost almost 1,000 state legislative seats under the Obama administration, and we got 300 of those back on Tuesday. And we also got the 6 trifectas, as I mentioned. And so there is a huge opportunity in those states and in states where there's still mixed government to actually move forward some legislation that helps us rewrite those rules and protect the right to vote, protect the right to actually choose your electors, and help our democracy. So these are 2 documents, the state guide and the offense in Congress guide, but they're actually one strategy. This is how we're going to put in place the pieces that build the world we need to see in 2021. If we do this right, we're going to force the Trump administration into defense mode with constant investigations and oversight. We're going to show what Democrats can do differently. We're going to show what a democratic governance and policy could look like. We're going to consolidate Democrats around a better vision for the country, and we're going to set up those pieces that we need to put in place for 2020 and for 2021. And Susanna is going to talk about how we pull together for the national strategy that gets us there.
Hi, everybody. I'm Susanna, the National Organizing Director here at Indivisible, and it's such a privilege to be on tonight's call with all of you. Before I say anything, I want to acknowledge that we're pushing out a lot of information right now, and even if we stayed on for 4 hours tonight, we'd still have more to dig into. We're building out a plan to make sure that folks have a chance to dig more fully into the federal and state pieces of the guide. And we'll be looking to get feedback from all of you coming out of this call to figure out how to make those spaces most effective. But to start, we're going to be scheduling a national call for the week after Thanksgiving that will be completely dedicated to answering questions about the guides, as well as the organizing approach and the plan for the first 100 days of Congress that we're going to talk through next. Okay. So you heard about the strategic framework for our work this year. And now we're going to talk a little bit about our organizing priorities. And then I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Sarah, who you met at the top of this call, who will talk through the first action we're planning right out of the gates to set the tone with the new Congress. Heading into 2019, we've got 3 equally important and reinforcing movement priorities for our organizing, all of which should sound familiar, but explicitly prioritizing them is reflective of the moment we're in, really taking stock of the lessons we've learned and the opportunities and challenges our movement will face in this next phase. First, We're continuing our focus on building strong groups, taking strategic action, and building power at the local level. Second, we're investing in ways to support groups working to win progressive change at the state level. And third, we're building a nationally coordinated campaigning and organizing infrastructure that will provide us the platform we need to make our movement's voice louder and more powerful than the sum of its parts. For many of you, that last one will sound like going back to the roots of Indivisible, what really made the Indivisible the powerful movement that it is. Since 2017, Indivisible groups across the country have been putting pressure on their members of Congress and holding them accountable. So much so that many Republican members of Congress opted to retire than be accountable to us. This pressure opened up opportunities for us to replace the Republicans with Democrats in districts that were long held by Republicans. In many situations, these efforts were accomplished by one or two really determined groups. If one group can contribute such tremendous shifts to national political power, imagine what we can do by really coordinating support with a unified voice and agenda. Building a unified movement that is capable of breaking through all the other noise and can push our issues into the national spotlight and can shape the message in national media is going to take coordination and strategic alignment. And this movement coordination is going to mean that there are moments when groups in blue states feel like you're preaching to the choir, and groups in red or purple states feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall. But it matters because it builds and shows the strength and power of our movement overall to elected officials up and down the ticket, the media, and the folks who are still on the sidelines but will be inspired to join us. The organizing team, along with every other member on the Indivisible staff, will continue to wake up every day committed to supporting the leadership and organizing work that you're all leading. We'll continue to provide trainings, toolkits, resources, and strategic guidance. And we want to keep working with all of you to identify ways to do that better and more. And we'll also follow up with more information about the plan for specifically building out the nationally coordinated network. Again, relying on the thought partnership of this group for how we make that the strongest possible plan. And for those of you who don't know, we've got a great team of organizers based across the country who are working directly with leaders to support the work of building strong groups and strong organizing. So if you want to be connected to the organizer in your state or your region, or you want to learn more about the national network of Indivisible groups, we'll send an email out afterwards, after this call, with a link to submit to let us know that you're interested and we can follow up. But if you're ready to hit send right now on an email to us, you can email field@indivisible.org. Again, that's field, F-I-E-L-D, @indivisible.org. Okay, so that was the broad overview of our organizing and movement building priorities. Again, much, much more to come, and we look forward to working in partnership with all of you to make it as powerful as possible. And now we're going to talk about concrete next steps. The first 100 days of Congress. So this is where we really put the framework and the organizing approach into action. So many of us have heard the phrase first 100 days of Congress. That's because it refers to the period of time during which a new Congress indicates their agenda priorities. And so really it's the period of time that movements and special interests on all sides have to influence that agenda. Because of the incredible organizing work of everybody on this call, our larger Indivisible movement, and so many others, this is a democratic agenda. Democrats will use this window to signal their agenda, what they're for, and what they would deliver if they fully took back power in 2020. And because of the power our movement has built, we've got an opportunity to influence that agenda. So again, the first 100 days is the chance to set the tone with Congress and a chance to keep building the strength of our groups. It's about taking the momentum, including all the folks who came out with us during the election cycle, and bringing it forward with us. And the first 100 days connects to the 2020 election. The legislative items that move during the first 100 days become the default policy priorities for 2020 and 2021. That means that if we show up and flex our movement muscle and make our voice loud and clear in the first 100 days of this new Congress, we have the opportunity to influence the set of policy issues and value propositions that presidential candidates need to respond to as they enter the race for 2020, which we can expect to happen on the early side of this year. So in short, the things on the agenda in the first 100 days will likely be the things that Democrats will pass in 2021 if they win. This is our first chance to play offense. Incoming Dems will feel some obligation to deliver on their promise. but we also know that there's a tendency in Congress to water things down, to coalesce around the least common denominator, to do the thing that will cause the littlest friction, which then results in policy that is far less progressive and impactful than it could have been or should. Tone for the relationship between the member of Congress and us, saying, we're here, we're paying attention, we're going to hold you accountable to what you do. And by the way, in case you forgot, we're really powerful and we have a huge movement behind us. So here's what we know so far about the first 100 days. We know that the Dems are likely going to be introducing a pro-democracy reform package as their first bill, H.R. 1. At the moment, this package would include provisions that would protect voting rights for Americans, end the gerrymandering that advantages Republicans over Democrats, provide additional election security, put a stop to the flagrant corruption we're seeing out of this administration, as well as provisions intended to get money out of politics. All of these are badly needed reforms to problems that have made it so that our democracy only works for some, the rich and the powerful, and really puts it out of reach for so many others, including people of color, working families, and everyday Americans. That's why we want to push to make that democracy package as progressive as possible to ensure that it does not get watered down. And we're already hearing that people within the caucus are pushing back against the campaign reform provision and the gerrymandering provision. Based on what we know so far, H.R. 1 could be wrapped up by mid-January, which is why the January 3rd date is even more important. After that, it's going to be a bit of a wait and see. And as always, and you've heard on this call tonight, it's our commitment to provide the most strategic guidance possible as we see what unfolds. We do know that flexing our muscle consistently throughout the first 100 days will be critically important as a vehicle of influence out of the gates, and in terms of making it clear to Congress the power our movement has to wield moving forward. So we're planning on 3 collective movement moments. The first one is January 3rd, which Sarah is about to talk about. The second is making a really big splash across the country during the February recess. And then we'll also plan for another National Day of Action to close out the first 100 days. And based on what happens, there may be additional rapid response moments. And we also know that during this time, a lot of groups will be working on state legislative fights as well. So we'll be in touch as we get closer to January 3rd. We're going to end throughout the 100-day plan, including a couple of national calls just like this to make sure that we're all on the same page and have what we need to organize successfully. I'm going to pass it over to Sarah now to talk about January 3rd. And again, I'm just so excited to have everyone on the call tonight and to be moving forward with everybody here.
Great. Thank you so much, Susanna and Leah. And thank you all for bearing with us. I saw some great questions and comments in the chat box. Now that we've talked about the strategic framework for the new Congress and the importance of the first 100 days, I'm going to dive into our first collective movement moment that Susanna was discussing and how you can get started in your community. So specifically, I'm going to be reviewing what we're doing, why we're doing it, and the resources that we have coming. So over the last 2 years, we've seen indivisibles across the country come together in unified action again and again, whether against Trump Care, the tax scam, or in the recent elections. At the start of the new Congress, it's going to be more important than ever to show that collective power. That's why we're having our first day of action on the first day of the new Congress. That's January 3rd. During the course of the midterm elections, we were focused on winning last Tuesday, of course, but we also had another goal: build up power for the day after the election to turn right back around and hold our new elected officials accountable, whether those are Democrats, Republicans, or anything in between. So let's take all that momentum and power we built and show it right out of the gate with this new Congress with a massive day of action. Indivisible has always made a commitment to share the most strategic goals and tactics, and in this case, making a big splash in the third day of the new year is the most important thing we can be doing. So there are a few goals for this day of action. First, we want to put our members of Congress on notice generally. Right off the bat, we want to show our MOCs that we expect them to pass progressive bills, and we will be holding them accountable to that, and in many cases to their campaign promises. Second, we want to push for progressive policies. As Susanna mentioned, we're hearing one of the first pushes in the new Congress will be a democracy package, and we want to make sure indivisibles are playing a role in making that package as progressive as possible. And third, we want to make sure the indivisible voice is heard nationally. we're stronger when our voices all come together as one. So even if you have a Republican MOC who never votes our way, or a new progressive MOC who you're pretty sure will be on our side, it's important to show our strength across the country. So let's show everyone that the resistance is stronger than ever. So on January 3rd, we'll be asking folks to do public events outside district offices or in another public place if maybe your new MOC doesn't have one yet, or if the closest district office is very far away. If you have a friendly MOC, you can invite them to join. If you have a not so friendly MOC, this is a great way to tell them that we're here and more ready than ever. So we're doing public events rather than private office drop-ins to make sure as many folks as possible can join, to ensure that you can invite local media to get your event covered, and to ensure that the impact reaches well beyond your MOC. These events will also show that Indivisible isn't just about resisting Trump, it's also about pushing for bold progressive policies. So once you hop off the call, go register your event at indivisible.org/events. You'll have an email coming with some links after the call. And then take a quick break to celebrate our wins last week. And once you've fully rested, take some time to plan out your event before the holidays fully kick in. As always, we want to support you in making your day of action the best it can be. So over the next month and a half in the lead up to January 3rd, we'll be providing a new toolkit with everything you need to plan, execute, and debrief your events. We'll have webinars coming up. We'll have a host call for folks who are hosting events. And of course, we'll have organizer support. So as Susanna mentioned, we have amazing organizers based across the country who can support you with your planning. So that is a quick overview of the day of action. I also want to jump in now to a couple of other next steps, and then I'm going to open it up to a Q&A. So in addition to the day of action, there are a couple of really important things for y'all to do. First of all, take some time to relax. So I know that many folks on the call jumped right back into things for rallies last week, and are just really ready to go and keep running. But just a reminder, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint, and some of our toughest work is still ahead of us. So, make sure that you're taking care of yourself, taking care of the ones around you, and making sure that your group is moving forward stronger than ever. We also are asking folks to think about throwing Indivisible chill parties. So in long-term organizing, it's so important to celebrate the hard work that you've done, and to make space and time for your group to come together and continue to build a community. So keep an eye out. We have a toolkit coming out with potential ideas and ways to plan a really fun event to decompress, celebrate your success, and regroup. I just looked at the chat box and I see everyone saying we've already partied, which is great, but also make sure that you're really putting in enough time to decompress and come together as a group. And then finally, of course, start planning your day of action. We are going to be quickly approaching the new Congress, so we'll have the toolkit coming in the next couple of weeks. We'll have, as I mentioned, a host call. And so start getting those set, register your event after the call on the Indivisible map so we can help recruit, we can help support you. And then we'll be following up with more information about all of that. So now we're going to dive into, as I said, a Q&A. So we only have about 10 minutes and we have a lot of questions. So we are going to take as many questions as we can, and then over the next few days, we're going to put together an FAQ of questions that we saw coming up a lot, and we'll be sending that around to folks who were on the call so that we can make sure that questions are getting answered. We're also going to be setting up a call, not next week, but the week after that, to make sure that we're answering as many questions as we possibly can. And of course, feel free to reach out to your organizer to ask more questions, and we'll be continuing to make space to make sure that you have all the information that you need. So we have, of course, Leah and Susanna and Mari on the call. We also had our policy director, Angel, hop on to help answer some questions. So keep asking them in the chat box, or I'm sorry, in the Q&A box. And again, we're going to get through what we can, and we'll take note of the questions that we're not able to get to. So let's start off with Andrea G asked, I read that having a blue house will help protect the Mueller investigation. How? I'll kick that over to Angel to start.
Yeah, hey, hi everyone. Glad to be here. Look, one of the most important changes in the next Congress is that we're going to have new powers, and Mueller is working. We don't know what the report is gonna say, and to be completely honest, we don't even know if we're going to see a copy of the report. Mueller is going to send that report to his bosses over at DOJ. We know that there's a huge crisis now that we have Matthew Whitaker in charge of DOJ, but it will get to Congress, and Democrats will now have new powers in key committees like the Intelligence Committee, like the Judiciary Committee, where they can investigate any attempts by Trump to undermine that investigation. So it's already clear that if Trump continues to undermine this investigation, Democrats are going to continue to investigate. So that having those powers automatically protects Mueller. Now, I know that there are a lot of questions about whether or not we should be pushing this Mueller protection bill. The fact is, what we have heard from DOJ, from Matthew Whitaker, is that he doesn't necessarily want to fire Mueller, which is what the Mueller protection bill would do. It would protect from a firing. What he wants to do is basically undermine his ability to do the investigation, which is why Democrats immediately in the next Congress need to use their powers to investigate any obstruction of justice from Trump, any attempts to undermine the investigation, and then, depending on what Mueller finds, make sure that we hold him accountable for every one of his abuses and his crimes.
Great, thank you, Angel. I think the next question may be for you as well, but I'm going to answer two quick things that I see popping up a bit. One is if we have a recording of this call. Yes, we are recording the call. We will be sending it around after, so you can feel free to send it around to folks who weren't able to make it, to do a viewing party at your group. I'm sure everyone wants to do a viewing party of this call. So we'll have that coming soon. And then another question that I just saw as well, which is when will we get the new guides? And those are coming out tomorrow. So you can keep an eye out. You'll be getting an email about that. But I'm going to give it to Angel for the next question, which is, will we be trying to guide the Democratic agenda in 2019?
Yeah, so I mean, so one way that you can help get advanced progressive policies in the new Democratic Congress and the new agenda is, for example, this HR 1 package. Like Susanna mentioned, there is likely going to be a bill on democracy, but we have no idea what it's going to look like. We know we have some idea, but it will likely change before now and the first day of Congress on January 3rd. The most important thing that we need to do is make sure that Democrats stand by progressive values, make sure that they are defending those voters that put them into office by passing a bold, progressive, democratic democracy bill. That is one way of making sure that we are moving the agenda forward in the right way. Another way that we can help define the agenda is through the oversight committees, the oversight powers that we're getting in the new Congress. There are going to be a ton of new committee chairs. In a lot of cases, Democratic committee chairs that have never done this before. They've never been in the majority. They don't know what it means to chair a committee. And they're going to have a lot of power to define policy over the next 2 years. And remember, the policy that we work on in the next 2 years will likely be the policies that we will advance in 2021 once we take back the White House. And so we can help define, shape, and advance policies through those committees, through oversight, and by communicating with your members of Congress to make sure that they are also pushing for big, bold, progressive policies.
Great, thank you, Angel. I'm seeing a couple of different questions about if there is flexibility on the date of the day of action or flexibility about the tactics that you're doing. So I'm going to hand that one over to Susanna.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah? Okay. So I saw a couple of questions about the date, January 3rd date. So as we talked about, so that's the first day of the new Congress. The HR 1 is going to move really quickly. So the earlier, the better. That said, definitely movement, unified voice, breaking through all the other noise piece. But I would say if you can't do it on January 3rd, then having it within that first week, if at all possible, is best. And then if it's the difference between a weekday and a weekend, weekends are usually less good for press. So if you're trying to get press out there, which is another great way to get your message out, then as much as possible, doing it during the week is better. But again, really, we want as many folks as possible taking action in that first week. And then if we can really have that movement moment on January 3rd, it will really, really empower all the work that we're doing. But end of the day, we want as many folks as possible out there taking action, bringing all the momentum from election season into the new Congress. And then in terms of the type of event, so this is, I think there's two pieces here. We want to have our voice heard. And we do want to use this as a moment to build our groups, build our local power. So instead of having district office visits, which usually can only be a small group of people, we want to have these sort of outside events that as many people as possible could come to. We can invite press to. If you've got the friendly member of Congress, they can come. If you have great speakers who can talk about why this democracy package matters so much to them, they can speak. You can invite the media, but again, sort of the public-facing, media-friendly events that a lot of folks can come out to. And then if you also want to do a district visit, fantastic.
I'll just add super quickly, this is really so much about the setting the narrative. So we know that the grassroots delivered this election, and this is about establishing that the grassroots is not going away. They are going to be with the new legislators. They're going to be with the old legislators every step of the way. And so making sure that that is the first thing that people are thinking about on the first day of Congress is a big deal. And I'll just add, so just one quick thing on being a new member of Congress. Being a new member of Congress is honestly chaos. You don't know like where your office is, and you're trying to hire staff, and you're trying to figure out like how anything works. And people showing up immediately is actually a really powerful tool, because it's like one of the first things, literally everything that happens in those first few days is very impactful in terms of it shaping how you understand what's going on around you. And so this is a really core moment for a message like that to get through.
Great, thank you, Leah and Susanna. I saw some questions about how to get in touch and what the email that Susanna had mentioned earlier was. It's field, F-I-E-L-D, @indivisible.org. You can feel free to reach out there with questions. You can also go to, bear with me, this is kind of a clunky website address, but it's indivisible.org/ask-organizer. indivisible.org/ask-organizer. And you can ask questions in there, and the email will be automatically routed to the relevant organizer for your area. All right, I think we have time for probably about 2 more questions. So can we focus on flipping the Senate in 2020? We got that from a couple folks and from someone named Charles. So Mari, do you want to start, and then maybe Angel jump in?
Sure, yeah, happy to start. Hey, thanks for the question, Charles, and others who are asking. We definitely are looking to a much more favorable Senate map, which is really exciting. And really, like, even this Senate map, considering how tough the terrain was, really proud of the gains that, the wins and the gains this cycle. So just want to note that. I think it's no surprise that Colorado groups are probably really excited about taking on Cory Gardner. He will be one of the most vulnerable Republicans into this next cycle. But I mean, there are so many Republicans up. There are 21 Republicans up this cycle. Some notable ones that I think folks might be drawing extra attention to: Cory Gardner in Colorado, Perdue in Georgia, Ernst in Iowa, Collins, of course, and her epic failures in Maine, Tillis in North Carolina, Graham in South Carolina, Alexander in Tennessee, Cornyn in Texas. And of course, there's many that I haven't mentioned, but the map for us looks much more favorable, both because they are just having to defend way more people. We've also expanded the map this cycle. We've grown our base. Our electorate looks different. And as many of us already know, that our electorate in a presidential is much more favorable for us. So to me, if we're looking at the gains we made this cycle, this midterm cycle, the way in which we brought a ton of new voters who hadn't participated in a midterm election before kind of coming in for the first time here in a non-traditional way and looking forward to a map that favors Democrats in a presidential year. It's still going to be really tough. I mean, Trump and white supremacy will not go easily, but this movement is really being built for this moment, and there is so much at stake that in every state, really, not just in some of these battlegrounds that were mentioned, but we're really excited to plan this out and map this out with you because we are going into this with a lot of strength.
Yeah, and can I just quickly add to some of that? I totally agree with Mari. So one thing about 2020 is one of the reasons why we're going on offense is that Democrats need to show voters and the public the things that they're for, the things that they're going to fight for, and that is going to help us win in 2020 by moving some of those bold progressive policies, and that starts on day one of the new Congress.
Great. Thank you, Angel. All right, we're going to take one more question. Saw a couple of folks asking in the chat box if they should come to DC for the day of action. You should focus on being in district and near district offices and making sure that you're having an impact locally. I also see a question that I will answer quickly, which is how many people are on this call. We have over 1,400 folks on the line right now, and it's kind of been going up and down. So we've had a lot of really great folks joining us tonight. So the last question that I've seen a bunch of different things about is how can groups work with one another to make sure that their work isn't duplicative? Susanna, do you want to start with that one? How groups can make sure they're working together and that their work isn't duplicative?
Yeah, so this is a fantastic question and absolutely fits both into the sort of making the state work stronger and the movement voice stronger. The first thing I would say is if you're not already in touch with your organizer, that is absolutely the first step. So emailing us at field@Indivisible, that's where we have sort of the best holistic knowledge of the groups in each state that we can then directly connect you with. And we've already got a lot of different state networks set up being led by Indivisible groups in those states. So we can also help make sure that folks are on the right conference calls, on the right email threads, and generally connected to the right folks. But that is a great question. And, you know, given there are lots of different pieces of work that are going to be moving at different times at the federal level, at the state level, at the local level. So the more connected we are with other groups, also the more that we can sort of divide and conquer in moments when that's really critical. So it's a fantastic question. And again, I would really say reach out to us, field@indivisible.org. Let us know where you are, and we will make sure you get connected to the other groups in that state.
Great. Thank y'all. Thanks so much, everyone, for hopping on. I see a ton of questions popping up, and we're going to continue to make sure that we're answering questions and providing you all with the support. So definitely keep the questions coming. We'll be having some follow-up calls and conversations, and you can expect an email this evening with more information and with some next steps from this call. So thank you all so much for your amazing work. It's so great to be on the call tonight with you all. And we will talk to you all soon. Bye.
Thank you. Gracias.